Hi, hello, my name is Sydney. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going over all of the books I read in the month of February. In the month of February, I ended up reading a total of 7 books, which I'm honestly really proud of myself for doing. Some of them I did listen to on audiobook, which obviously I can be able to listen to some books while I'm doing things around the house or anything like that, which is really nice. But most of these I did read, and I did end up having one DNF. This is the first DNF of the year, and I really do try not to finish books and just kind of leave them there. So I might try to go back to this book later on in the year, but at the time I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't vibing with the book. So I decided, why not just DNF it and think about going back to it later. So yeah, let's just get into all the books I read in the month of February. The first book I read in the month of February was Flawless by Elsie Silver. I ended up giving this book a 3.25, which I really expected to like this more than I did. And I'm pretty sure this is like obviously not everybody's favorite, at least from what I've seen on Book Talk and Booktube. I believe a lot of people really like Powerless and Heartless, I think. So I'm really excited to continue the series. I 100% will be continuing the Chestnut Spring series. This one just wasn't my favorite, and this was my first cowboy romance, but I did like that aspect of the book. I don't know, there was definitely some things that kind of steered me away and made me rate it a 3.25, which by any means is not a bad rating at all. I just really felt myself like skimming through the pages and not actually reading what was going on. I was kind of just like reading the dialogue and not actually focusing on the actual story, which clearly means that I wasn't super into it, because when I'm into a book, I am completely into it. I'm like immersed into the world and I love the characters, which one thing I really didn't like about our male main character, Rhett, was that he called our female main character, Summer, Princess. And I don't know why, that just like, I didn't really like it. I know that's definitely some people's thing, but for me, I don't know. I just really did not like that aspect. I will say that I did really like Summer, our female main character, and I don't know, I just didn't feel too connected to the story, which obviously it's just like a romance. There wasn't like too much going on in it, at least I thought, but I just didn't feel too connected. Also, if you guys don't like spice, I definitely don't think this book is for you. There was a lot of spice. I feel like a lot of the book was focused on the spice scenes once they ended up actually getting together, which is completely fine. I just feel like there was a lot of it, but I just didn't really feel too connected to the story, honestly, hence why I gave it a 3.25. But again, like I said, this was not a horrible book, and I am really excited to continue the Chestnut Springs series. Next up, we have the first book that I ended up DNFing of the year, and that was Never by Jessa Hastings. I know when this book originally came out, it was very controversial. A lot of people didn't really like it, and I was surprised because obviously with the Magnolia Parks Daisy Hate series, a lot of people really liked Jessa's writing. So I was really confused as to why people didn't like this book, but after starting to read it, I don't even know how far I got into it. I read it on my Kindle, but I just couldn't keep reading it. It just felt really weird. If you guys don't know what this is a Peter Pan retelling pretty much, and Peter Pan just felt like really young and childish, which obviously, but he was supposed to be older, and it just made me feel really uncomfortable and weird reading the story, because obviously I know the story of Peter Pan. I grew up with that, and Peter Pan is supposed to be like a child, and in this story he pretty much had like the mindset of a child but was like in the body of like a man. So it just felt really weird, and I just felt like really like awkward reading the book, so I just couldn't continue it. I did really like our female main character, but again, it just felt like a little bit weird. So of course I obviously ended up DNFing it just because I wasn't vibing with the story. I didn't feel connected to the characters, and like I said, I just felt a little bit awkward. It was weird for me to read it, so I ended up just deciding to DNF it. Will I go back to this book? Honestly, probably not, but I hate leaving books on my shelf that I haven't finished. So maybe one day I'll end up picking this book back up, but I don't know. At this point, it just wasn't for me, and I don't foresee myself picking this book up again. Next up, we have Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is technically not the first book, but it also is the first book in the Throne of Glass series. I know there's a bunch of different reading orders for the Throne of Glass series, but I decided to pick the Assassin's Blade up first. And honestly, I don't know. I don't really know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting some like mind-blowing book, and I was expecting to be like obsessed with the world and obsessed with this book, but I've also seen a lot of people say that maybe it might take you a little while to get into the series. So I ended up giving this book a 3.75. I'm like teetering on a 4-star, but I feel like 3.75 is like a good way to stand because I definitely don't think it's a 4-star book. So 3.75 final rating, but I don't know. I definitely really liked our main character, Selena Sardofian. I don't know why. I was just about to say it backwards, but I really did like her. I just felt like, I don't know, I feel like this book did give a little bit of background for the following books in the series. I haven't read any of the following books, so I wouldn't know. But from what I've heard, this kind of gives good background for the series. And I feel like it just maybe wasn't what I was expecting because we were kind of just following, it was like a bunch of short stories inside of this book, and that definitely was not what I thought this book was going to be. But I don't know, I just didn't feel too connected. I found myself like not really paying attention, and I was losing track half the time, and I feel like I wasn't retaining all of the information that I really needed to, but I feel like I got the gist of everything. I obviously like met the characters, the main character, and all the other like side characters in the book, so that's nice to be able to have an idea of who everybody is and kind of get a taste for a little bit of the world. I do think this is a good place to start for like the character introduction and kind of see who Selena is and kind of like how she got to the point she is, I'm assuming, which we will see in the later half of the series. But overall, I did enjoy the book, and I'm really, really excited to continue the Throne of Glass series. This just, I am assuming, probably will not be my favorite, and I might end up having to go back and read this again if I don't pick up the following book in the Throne of Glass series soon. So I'm definitely going to put that on my TBR so that I can hopefully get through this series because it definitely is very intimidating, but I want to be included in the Throne of Glass lore. So we'll see. Next up, we have the second book in the Calloway Sisters series, and this is Ricochet by Krista and Becca Ritchie. And I did end up really enjoying this book. I gave it a 4.25. And I don't know, there's just something about Lily and Lo. I just really love their story and their like little connection that they have together. I actually have the next book in the series on my TBR for this month, so I'm really excited to get to that. But this was a shorter book, so it was nice to be able to like kind of fly through this. It wasn't super long, which I really appreciated. Something that I wish we got more of was Lo in this book. I mean, I can't really like say much, obviously, since this is the second book in the series, but I do wish we saw a little bit more of Lo in this book. But obviously I kind of like get why we didn't, and this was more focused kind of on Lily. I did also really enjoy that they are both trying to work through their addictions. If you guys don't know, if you haven't read this series, I definitely recommend you look up trigger warnings before jumping into the Calloway Sisters series, just because there are a lot of heavy topics like addiction and things like that that are tackled in this series. So definitely look up trigger warnings. But I did really like to see that they were trying to work on themselves, better themselves for each other. So that was really cute. Overall, I am really excited to continue this series and jump into the next book. And like I said, 4.25, I definitely recommend you guys picking up this series if you haven't already. Next up, we have Daydream by Hannah Grace, and this is part of the Maple Hills series. This is the third and final book as of now of the Maple Hills series, and I absolutely love this book. If you don't know, our two main characters are Hallie and Henry, and I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. I definitely think that Henry really changed as a character from the first couple of books. He wasn't really very much in the second book, but from the first book to this book, I definitely feel like I sensed a little bit of a change in him. But overall, he was so sweet to Hallie. He was so patient and understanding with her. And she really just like came out of her bubble after she met Henry and like that friend group. And I really loved seeing her like grow as a person. Another thing I really loved about this book was how Hallie really enjoyed reading, and she was kind of like a book nerd. And I don't know, whenever any main characters in books that I read are also lovers of books or like work at libraries, or literally if a book has anything to do with books, then I don't know, I just instantly like love that character. So I really did really like Hallie, and I just enjoyed Henry and Hallie's little romance that they end up building and the found family that Hallie was able to experience in this book. Overall, it was really good, and I am happy to be able to check off a series from my TBR. And if you guys haven't read this series yet, I 100% think you guys should read this series. Next up, I don't actually have a physical copy. I don't even know if a physical copy of this exists, but we have The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez, and I ended up giving this a 5 stars. This is a very, very short little book. I feel like it's kind of like could be compared to a novella, but it's not a novella. But anything Abby Jimenez writes, I will be reading. No matter what, I'm going to be sat and I'm going to be reading whatever she writes, because I absolutely love Abby Jimenez. This was a really perfect, quick, short, easy read. It was kind of like a very good palate cleanser in between some of these books that I really enjoyed. And honestly, there wasn't like too much going on in this book, but the romance that we get was so cute. And a little bit of a trigger warning if like stalkers trigger you or anything like that, maybe like kind of not read this book just because there is a stalker in this. I honestly do really wish we had more from these characters, because I just really loved these characters together. And honestly, if there was a whole book about them, I feel like I would have been completely fine with that. Or even like the 2 side characters, like the 2 main characters' best friends. I feel like that would also be a cute book to read. So maybe Abby will come out with a little other kind of like novella or second book to this, and we will be able to see those 2 characters. Who knows? But like I said, 5 stars. Anything Abby Jimenez writes, I'm gonna read. And I don't know, this book was just really good, and overall I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. And if you guys don't know, this is like a Groundhog Day trope. So pretty much our female main character keeps waking up on Valentine's Day and is like over and over again living the same exact day, February 14th, and we kind of just get to go along with all of those days that she ends up living, and we get to see like how her life is and kind of like get a little bit of a background of her and who she is. Also, look at these beautiful sprayed edges on this copy. I had to pick this up, but obviously I knew I needed to read this book in February because duh, Valentine's Day, it couldn't be any more perfect. Also, this was a book club book pick that I was a part of on Fable, so again, I knew I needed to read it. And this definitely was like a cute, short, little like YA romance, and I definitely did like it. It just wasn't my favorite. I did give it a 3 stars, which again is not bad at all. And I don't know, I was just like finding myself skimming through this book and just kind of like waiting for it to be over. I don't know, I think obviously with the trope that the Groundhog's Day trope brings is a lot of things are repetitive. Obviously, you're repeating the same day over and over and over again. So I just kind of got a little bit bored in the story and found myself trying to just make it to the end or push through to something that was gonna like pique my interest. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of did predict what was gonna happen in the end. And like once we started to get to like the final little bits of the book, I just was like, okay, like I think I know what's gonna happen. And I ended up being right, which kind of sucks because I like to like be surprised by books, especially when things have like a turn that I wasn't expecting. But again, this is just a little YA romance book, so there obviously wasn't going to be any crazy big huge events that happened, but I don't know, it was just very predictable to me. I did appreciate how our female main character really did grow into herself and kind of like figured out that she needed to like fix her life in some ways, or kind of just like talk to people and let them know like how she's feeling. But again, this was like set in high school, so I couldn't really relate to that obviously because I'm not in high school anymore, so that just wasn't something that I could super relate to. But it still was cute, and I definitely think like for the month of February it was a good book to read. And if you need like a little palette cleanser book, I think that this is also a good book to pick up. And if you like YA books, definitely recommend picking this book up. Last but not least, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry, and I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. I really enjoyed our 2 main characters. I don't know, there was just like a lot that I loved about both of them individually. If you don't know anything about this book, pretty much our 2 main characters are in relationships, and then their partners end up leaving them to get together. And when I heard about that, I thought that was actually crazy. I feel like this book was like a pretty unique concept. Our main character Daphne has nowhere to go after her and her partner end up splitting up. So she ends up moving in with Miles, which is the partner of the other partner that ended up splitting up so that the 2 partners could get together. So we have Daphne and Miles, the 2 partners that were left, and then they ended up living together because Daphne didn't have anywhere to live. So she like asked him and he was like, yeah, like why not, whatever. So they ended up living together, and they honestly didn't really know each other that well. So like being able to see them get to know each other and kind of build a friendship before it kind of like progressed into a romance was really cute, and I did really enjoy it. I also think a lot of people could heavily relate to these 2 main characters. Both of them had things that happened in their life or kind of people in their life that I think are very relatable. I personally couldn't relate to them too much, but I really appreciated how Emily Henry wrote them to be more like realistic people, and like they were living a more like realistic lifestyle, if you picking up what I'm putting down. But I do really think a lot of people could relate to these 2 main characters and could find a lot of value out of what they kind of like have been through and learn from them in a way. But I just really loved them. I loved their romance. I also loved how our female main character Daphne worked in a library, and she loved kids, and she like grew up going to the library. She grew up loving books, and again, like I said before, anything that has to do with library, books, our main character having the association with books and reading, I just love. So 10 out of 10 for Daphne, and this book was really good. This is definitely like, I think, a must read, even if you don't like Emily Henry, which I do like Emily Henry. But if you don't like Emily Henry, I think you should definitely pick up this book and just give it a try, because it was really cute and I did really like it. Those were all of the books I ended up reading in the month of February, plus 1 DNF, my first DNF of the year. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you read any of these books, definitely let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. And if you end up picking up any of these books because of this video, also let me know. But I hope you guys have a great day or night wherever you are, and happy reading.